I began this conversation not only to assess the significance of this and why it appears on the cover of Time magazine and why it's also mentioned prominently in Newsweek magazine, why everybody's talking about this, somehow a consideration of the impact of this sitcom. But I began by the guy who got the story. You got a call.
Yeah, I got a call. And
saying, it's all over, Bill, and I want you to know.
Yeah, that was about it.
Is that it?
Mm-hmm. Pretty much,
You
yeah.
pick up, and there's no PR guy, there's nothing, you get a call from Jerry Seinfeld says?
I got a call initially that said that, and it was like, I'm thinking about talking about it, I'm not sure I want to do it yet. You know, where are you going to be? It was Christmas. So I had to sort of rearrange my life a little bit. But
yeah, so what'd you do?
It was a good story. Well, I had actually had to drive from New Jersey to Virginia that day. So I wrote in the morning what I knew. Yeah. And Jerry was going to call me later and give me the quotes. And I got all the way down to Virginia, and it was a little bit longer than I hoped before he got in touch with me again. It was about 7 o'clock when I finally spoke to him. So, but he was, one side of him was still sort of concerned that it was Christmas, and he was telling like his crew who didn't know yet. Yeah. You know, he was going to be telling them through the press, and I think he was a little concerned about that. But you know, it was obviously something I was very excited about.
Did you have any idea to appear above the fold in the New York Times?
Well, I don't determine those things. I kind of knew they were excited about it, and it was Christmas. There isn't that much going on, so it was pretty good timing on his part. He got great coverage, God knows, everywhere else. So,
why did he do it?
Well, I think one of the things that he had said to me a couple of months earlier, I spoke to him, and he was talking then, and I kind of started to think about it then. He talked about the whole idea of being a stand-up comic and getting off the stage at the right time and wanting a standing ovation when you leave and don't wear out your welcome. And he talked a lot about that, and I kept thinking, you know, if he stays one more year, everyone knows he's going to leave. There's no more than one more year because they only had the cast signed up for one more. Yeah. So that sort of put in the back of my mind that he was thinking about it. And then he said, you know, I was talking to NBC, and they showed me all these statistics, and they showed that the show hasn't even peaked. It had gone, every year it's gotten bigger and bigger. And he said, I turned to NBC and I said, well, why would I want it to peak? Once it peaks, you're on the downside. I don't want to ever look back and say, oh, that was the peak back there.
I've read so much, I forget who's in what piece, so excuse me. He told someone, maybe you, that he wanted to leave with them standing up applauding. Yeah. That's the feeling he had. The whole metaphor he uses of stand-up comedy as defining his life.
Yeah. Well, I think that, yeah, I mean, the downside of it is that you know, if you stay on, too long, you sort of lose the audience. Even if you're giving them more than, even if you're giving them more and they think they want more, in reality, maybe they don't want more. They get a little sick of you, and so that the timing seemed right. I also think there's a factor. I think this is a guy who really cares about his show. He really cares what he's doing, and I think the last thing he wants to see is have the quality peter down. I mean, some people even think the quality is dropped off this year. I think he doesn't want to get in a situation like I don't know, not to name names, but like the Roseanne show where they just kind of they milked it dry. I think he has respect for his show and respect for his audience. I don't know, it's pretty unprecedented. I think that's why it's getting so much attention, that somebody does something so classy as actually just kind of exit this gracefully and this voluntarily.
You both have mentioned this. Bill Wright and Jack Welch came to see him, had a meeting in Wright's apartment over in Central Park West, and sort of said, this is how great this show is, and it's growing, and what are you talking about leaving now? You don't have to worry about leaving before it reaches its best. It's still growing. And they also said, how about $5 million an episode, which would come to some $90+ million for another year. And Seinfeld thought about it, was flattered by it, and said
no. I mean, when he told me, which seemed interesting, and it's probably easy for him to say, but he said, in my business, if you care about money, the way to get money is to not care about money. It's to care about comedy. If you care about money, then your comedy suffers. So, and I guess if you make, I don't know, I think the figure of Forbes was he made 94 million, I think, last year.
So overwhelming.
Yeah. So I wouldn't make, if somebody wanted to pay me $5 billion, to write an article, I'd be sure, but I guess it's easier for.
What's the significance, Steve, of Jerry Seinfeld to television, to primetime television
Well,
in
it's
America?
huge. It's huge. This is the most popular comedy. It's been the most popular comedy for several years. It's very rare for someone to go away when their comedy is on top. Lucy did it after the first show. Andy Griffith ended, and it was top rated then. It's very rare that you walk away, though, when you're on top. And this show anchors an entire night for NBC, and it's the most popular night of television. It's a huge night, and this will leave a big hole for them to fill. And lots of speculation about what will happen.
Like, what will NBC do, and especially
Absolutely.
if they lose ER, and so
Well, you know
their
what
big night is now.
Absolutely. Do you put Frasier there? Do you put Third Rock there? Do you move Friends to 9? Do you move to ER to 9? And I think there are a lot of questions to answer.
I asked Jerry this. I've only interviewed him once, and that was in 1993. And I find him amusing and funny and smart, and you saw this in these interviews. I mean, he talks about what television is like in the piece that you did. What is it, do you think, that made Seinfeld #1, that made this show so popular?
We were just talking about that outside because it's such a New York show, and it always kind of shocked me that it was so popular. And it's such, I mean, we're talking about 4 people who really hate each other on some level. And there's some talk now that we're going into the post-ironic phase of culture because of the success of Titanic, that people want everyone to be nice to each other now. And that Seinfeld sort of personified the late 80s, early 90s, the kind of cynicism. And I think that's true to a certain extent, but I think it's sort of unfathomable on some level, except that it was a terrifically funny show. I think that's the bottom line. I mean, it made you laugh. It was well crafted. The cast was the best. It's right up there with Mary Tyler Moore, the original show. I mean, all of them were flawless. This year, I think they've sort of become caricatures of characters because they were caricatures in some ways. But I just can't, I don't think you can deny how funny and how brilliant the show is.
He didn't like the Bill.
I think, you know, what he said repeatedly is the show was only about comedy. It was never about anything else. It was never about all those other things that get stuck into sitcoms that occasionally make you turn your stomach because the characters are so fake and false and are, you know, all of a sudden they're hugging each other or somebody has a disease or it was only about being funny, only about the little things in life that are funny. And if you can do that week after week and actually make people laugh out loud, boy, that's rare. How many shows have been able to do that? I think it's a unique show from that
Yeah, there's
respect.
never been a very special episode of Seinfeld.
No hugging,
I
no
think,
learning, as
that's,
Larry David said.
you know,
A very
there's
special-
never been a very
You know,
special episode of Seinfeld.
You know,
There's,
where George is on
a
drugs.
tragedy,
You know,
right.
you know, that's a very special episode. They
Well, the
don't
one
do
time they
that.
did that was that funny intervention, and you know they've made fun of all of that kind of thing. And I think you know they have not. There's no TV convention to this other than the fact that it's funny.
I think too, I think what you're getting at, I think there's, you know, I mean, yeah, it's all trying to be funny, but at the same time, I mean, there's truth in it too. I mean, not to make too big of a point of it, but you know, what you were talking about, you know, that these people who hate each other, I think, you know, I hope I don't sound too cynical, but I think, you know, I think in all friendships, there's a certain, you know, you know, undercurrent of distaste or distrust too. I think that's human nature, and you don't see that. You know, that's rarely, you certainly don't see that on television. Yeah, in this case, it's sort
People
of glorified.
say things to each other that other people think about and don't say, and they do. They say that to each other. They call each other. You know, Jerry says something to George that's just devastating, but he's his best friend, so you know, they just go on.
Yeah, people see themselves in the characters, even if they don't actually do the things that these characters do. They all say, "Oh, I have a friend that's just like that," or else they want to have that circle of friends. There's people that live next door. And plus, it's the perpetual child thing. I mean, Jerry never grows up. There's no kids. There's no responsibility. Right. You know, it's all hedonistic. And I think when Seinfeld came on, which is one thing that the TV business seems to forget, is that it was surprising. There was nothing else like it. And it, you know, spawned a whole series of copycat shows. But now they keep trying to, you know, do it again, and they can't. And they need to be looking for the things that are as surprising as Seinfeld was when it first came on. That breaks mold, as
Yeah,
he
and I think
said.
what Bruce was saying is true. I think you recognize some of yourself in every one of those characters. There are universal truths there and universal traits that aren't very flattering, but they are funny. And when you make fun of them, it really works.
I asked Steve Croft to come join us this evening. He couldn't because he was out of town, but he did a very interesting profile of Jerry. That's great. Now, here's what's interesting, too, is that he thought it was to be the hardest thing in the world to say to the people who are part of this show, it's over, because they'd just gotten a big contract raised to $650,000 an episode, and yet your story, somebody's story says.
Yeah. Well, our reporters. I didn't actually interview the rest of the cast, but one of our reporters, Jeffrey Ressner, did, and they all said. I mean, they were basically saying. I think all 3 of them said, you know, hey, we'd be happy to. You know, we certainly would have been happy to do it another year, but they respected what Jerry was saying about the timing of it, and they didn't have a problem with it. They supported him 100%.
Last summer I talked to Jason Alexander, and he said, you know, this character, I can't do anything more with this guy. I mean, the writers can write funny, and I can play funny, but I can't, you know, there's nothing more you can really do with it. So I don't think any of them felt like creatively they had to do another year, so it would only have been for the money, and they all felt all along that they were into something so special that if it was time to go, they weren't going to fight it. Even, you know, they'll all do well. They'll make big deals for themselves in the future, and they won't suffer financially.
I'm sure they're doing okay too before they're raised. I mean,
Yeah, sure.
Two questions. One, is there anything on American television from any of the 4 or 5 networks, like how many we have now, that approaches Seinfeld? Is there a Seinfeld wannabe in the making anywhere out
Well, I
there?
think The Simpsons is in a league of Seinfeld's stature. I think its accomplishments each and every week, I think they rival Seinfeld. It's not the same kind of show. It's a cartoon show in which the people are yellow.
But it's also been on many, many years.
it has.
But the interesting thing about Seinfeld was it got its break at exactly the right time for NBC. I mean, it was such a disaster for them when they were able to finally move Seinfeld behind Cheers for half of season when Cheers announced it was going to quit. And the whole country all of a sudden saw a show that had only been sort of a favorite among a cult audience, and it just took off. And I don't see anything like that on the horizon, where
Yeah,
there's
I
a
don't
show
think
that
there's any
isn't really
breakout
being.
phenomenon.
I mean, I think Everyone Loves Raymond is a very good
a
show.
great Sure. show.
Very, very
Yeah.
good show. But on CBS, it'll never get seen by that kind of audience.
And I
The
think
thing about the thing about Raymond that Seinfeld shares is that even though his name was on the show, it truly is an ensemble show. I mean, he's one of the most generous performers on television in that he really gives his backup performers equal time, and he's always given them complete credit. And you really feel that generosity. You look at a show like Veronica's Closet, where, you know, she's hogging all the lines and taking it away from everything. And you see why. Or Frasier is a really good ensemble show. I don't think it will ever achieve Seinfeld status or, you know, ratings.
Very few
but it's a
shows are
wonderful
going
show.
to. That's the other thing. You have to recognize this is a once in a decade or 2 decades kind of thing
It's
where a
Mary
show
Tyler Moore,
breaks
it's
through.
Seinfeld,
It's Cheers. It's the
MASH,
Honeymooners.
and Cheers and MASH,
It's,
and
you know,
Honeymooners and Lucy.
I mean,
You put them on 1, 2.
Honeymooners and Lucy are the shows that I always refer to because I had a conversation with Jerry about this. What is amazing about that is that it's 4 New York characters in an apartment. It's the same plot. Those 3 shows have the same plot.
He says that he doesn't think he's yet a great comedian. He says there are 2 great comedians,
Cosby
and Richard Pryor.
Richard Pryor.
Richard Pryor,
Yeah.
and he's not there yet. Is he right?
Yeah, I think so. I think Jerry is an
not
excellent
there yet.
he's an excellent stand-up comedian. I think he wants to go to a greater dimension. I think he wants to fill those shoes. And, you know, he's proved there are a lot of things he can do if he puts his mind to it. I wouldn't bet against him.
His
How much
body of work before he did the show was modest, as he pointed out there. He didn't have a Cosby-like background of album after album and, you know, concert after concert. So he really developed, I think, through this show.
With Larry David. I mean, I think you have to give Larry
Oh,
David.
Larry David who is Larry David? Explain who he is.
He was the co-creator of the show. He was also Jerry's friend. He's kind of the George character. He was the voice of George, and he left last season.
But we'll be writing
But
the
we'll
last
be writing
episode.
the last episode.
The last episode is interesting. It will be shot partly in New York, number
I
one.
don't think it's the last.
No, I
is
think
it?
he told me they're going to film one of the. They have 10 more episodes to shoot, and one of them will be shot in New York. He didn't know which one, but I don't think it was going to be the
Larry
final
David is
one.
writing the last one, and
Yeah.
also it will be accompanied by a documentary about the making of the
That's
last
what
show.
I
Kind of
Oh,
a
making
mock
of, yeah.
documentary,
A
kind of like
mock
a Spinal
documentary.
Tap thing.
Oh, it's a Spinal Tap.
Yeah, yeah. A real documentary would be fairly scary.
Fairly white.
Scary.
And Seinfeld is off now to do for HBO a kind of stand-up
Right,
thing
for the summer.
called
And then he's
Everything
in-
I Have to Say or something
Yeah,
like that.
he's ending his burying his old act in this, which is another
also
bold
pretty
thing to do.
brave, yeah.
Another bold
What do you
thing
mean
to do.
burying his own
He's
act?
going to do his
Greatest
old
hits. His
material
greatest hits.
and then never do it again.
Yeah.
He's sort of forcing himself to write new
Yeah.
material. I mean, he's kind of
so
setting
he's-
himself a public challenge.
This guy's closing the book on a lot of stuff in a short period of time. It's going to be interesting to see that fresh start.
An extraordinary television event.
I think one of the most extraordinary ones in recent memory, and I think the finale will be unbelievable.
Will break all records. You want to predict,
Yeah.
Mr. Carter,
I think it'll
for
be,
watching a
well,
television
it'll
show?
be hard to be at the level of MASH, its final episode, because when that was on, the networks were so much stronger.
Yeah, right.
But-
It's also cable now.
Because
It's
it's
like-
$1997.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
1990 rating dollars.
Yeah.
It's through the roof. Through the roof.
Louis Dreyfus told Entertainment Weekly that the last episode should be that they all finally get what they want, and they go off for a celebratory drive in a car, and it explodes.
And they have said that there'll be nothing like that because
Right, Larry David's backing
Larry
away
David said,
from
I'm
that.
not writing
Yeah.
anything
Yeah.
like that.
So- Right.
Let me ask you one thing.
Yeah.
What is this lipstick? I mean, what is this fingernail polish on your fingers?
Oh, okay. I am going to talk about this on national TV. Well, the story is my niece. I was in California for the holidays. My niece got fingernail polish, so can I put it on, Uncle Bruce? Yeah, sure. Blah 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 blah. So, and my wife kind of liked it. She said it turned her on. It was kind of sexy. So I was going to take
Go
it off to
Ellen.
go to work.
Go
and,
Ellen.
Yeah. And then she said, wear it when you go meet Jerry. And it's funny. And I told, Jerry asked me why I was wearing fingernail polish. And I told her because my wife, kind of turned her on and she wanted me to keep wearing it. And he was like, oh, well, that would be a great story for George. It is kind of.
Now, this is the last
That's good.
episode.
Yeah,
I think it's the last episode.
Well, that was the thing. And then tonight she's like, if you wear this on Charlie Rose, you were going to be one happy man. So, I don't know.
So Helen is one happy
Yeah,
woman.
wait,
then,
is this
too.
over yet? Can we go?
One last thing before we go. You have done 9 covers
Yeah, on Seinfeld,
on
yes,
Seinfeld.
yeah.
9 covers.
Yes, and he is extremely popular. Always will be. He's popular in reruns. He's popular in original episodes. He's popular on magazine covers. People like him.
Yeah. He says he wants to do a talk show.
Well,
We said
Or might consider a talk show, but didn't want to do sitcom.
I asked. I posed it. Would you do a talk show? Yeah, it was
Oh,
kind
I
of like
see,
that.
that
It
way,
wasn't
yeah.
like I don't think it was
I
a
don't think
concrete
he's
plan.
quite
he
sure
has.
what he's going to do yet,
Yeah.
but I think he's smart enough to know he can't do another sitcom. Not for a long time, maybe never.
'Cause he'll be competing with himself.
Exactly. It's impossible to compete with
How
that
much
thing.
money has Jerry Seinfeld made, and will he make from this situation?
I think he will personally make several $100 million.
Like Bill Cosby.
Yes, for sure. Because this thing will run forever.
Yeah.
This is the kind of you see the honeymooners that are still on. This will still be on. It's got that kind of.
I know he says he doesn't want to come
Thank
back. I would find it hard to believe that 3, 4, 5 years from now, he is not back in the way of Bob Newhart and Bill Cosby and the great comedians who preceded him.
Here's what he said to me. This was 1993. That struck me. He said, I love stand-up. I love to get out of here and still go do stand-up. Now, I don't know whether he feels that way today
That's-
or not.
He
That's
does.
exactly what he told me. I mean,
He told me the same thing.
Yeah.
it's like
Plus,
this
he
sort
loves
of weird.
New York too. He doesn't like LA.
He's going to move
so-
here, he
Yeah,
says.
definitely.
Yeah.
He has this weird. I don't know if a lot of comics have. This sort of a I don't know, samurai mentality or something
Yeah.
that going out. Stand up is sort of the purest thing. Like they either laugh or they don't. It's just you and the audience. Nobody is. You're not pretending to be anything else.
And
It's-
most stand-ups desperately want to get out of it. They
Yeah.
hate it. It's so humiliating when they're not successful. They hate it. It's awful.
Yeah, they want to do what he's doing. They want to
Yes.
play
I know.
the shows.
Exactly.
They desperately wanna do
and
what
they're
he's
using
doing.
stand-up as a pathway
means.
to their own sitcom or
Right.
their own talk show or something.
Right.
Here's the other thing that's great. The question was raised as to whether this year is not as good as previous years. And he said this wonderful thing, I thought. He said, what are you talking about? He said 35 million people, or whatever the number is, watch this show, and I'm worried about one critic or 2 critics who might have said it's not quite as good. He said it's like me doing stand-up, and there are 5,000 people in the room, and 4,998 of them are on their feet, and I'm worried about the 2 that are not on their feet. Not likely to happen.
Right. But I do think he is aware of the fact that his show is not quite at the level that it was before, and he
is
wants
aware
that.
of that.
I think he
And
is.
it bothers him,
Don't
and
you
maybe
think he's
that's
aware
the
of that?
He claimed to totally disagree with it. He said, maybe the first, so we're uneven. The show's always been uneven. It's supposed to be uneven. It's designed to be uneven.
But in his heart of hearts,
Sort of hearts.
If he was-
I don't know. I wouldn't
if he
want
was
to. I couldn't
cracking
judge Jerry's
along
heart
at
of
that
hearts.
level, I think.
I think if he thought it was great, he would not leave.
I think
You think so?
that's part of it.
And I
think-
also think that he's very loyal to his writers, and I don't think he really wants. I mean, he really doesn't take credit for the show, and I don't think he'd want to trash the show, because he is a nice man.